So we are running low on firewood, and it's the middle of February. We usually always run low on firewood at this point of the year. Living in a yurt, it's hard to gauge how much firewood we need because it's pretty cold in there. Today we woke up and it was 18 degrees Fahrenheit inside. I don't know what the conversion for Celsius is for that, but if you're in the UK or Canada or anywhere else besides the US, maybe you can do a conversion and let us know how cold that is to you. So what we did to mitigate our lack of firewood is we cut down an ash tree. So a few things about ash. This is an ash tree, and right now, especially in the northeast United States, they're being cut down like crazy right now because of the emerald ash borer. The emerald ash borer is an insect that came over, I don't know exactly where, I think somewhere in Asia. It was imported, and it kills ash trees. So ash trees are its main host, whether it's white ash or black ash or green ash. They bore into the tree and they kill it eventually. So people are going down willy-nilly, cutting them down.
Not the right thing to do.
No, it's not the right thing to do. We cut down the ash tree because, one, it was really close. Where Shakoi's a little bit above me right now, but this is, and the yurt is right there. You can see the chimney. But this is a pretty big slope. So the rest of the tree, the tops are down there. There's a couple of pieces over there that we're still going to grab. And so we did it because it was close, but we also did it because ash has the lowest moisture level. So a lot of people say you can burn it green, but what we're going to do is we're going to split it up, put it near the stove, let it dry out a little bit more, and then we can burn it while it's still pretty green. You need to have a pretty good bed of embers going for it to really catch good. If you're going to try to start a fire with it, it's not really the greatest to do that with, but we have a lot of dried cedar, and the cedar is really good to start a fire with. So that's one reason we cut the ash down. So here's more of those ash logs. You might ask, how do you know it's an ash tree? You don't see any leaves on it. And usually, a lot of people identify trees by leaves, but there's a couple of pretty easy indicators how you know it's an ash. So first, you can look at the bark. You can see the bark here is, get a good shot of it like that. The sun's not right. Let me get out of the shadow. Well, you can see the bark. It's pretty ridged, but they're not sharp ridges. They're kind of, you see right here, they're a little rounded. So it's got very distinct bark. Once you see enough ash trees, you can kind of tell almost just by looking at the bark. But another really important indicator, there's another ash tree down here we can show you. So if you look at this tree right here, it might be a little hard to tell, but if you look up at the branches, you might be able to see them and you might not, but they all have opposite branching. So that's when, maybe not so much for these branches here, but the small branches all the way up at the top, if you look at them, they all have opposite branching. So that's when, you have one main trunk or main branch, and then the two branches come out at the same spot. So there's only a few trees that do that. Maples do that, ashes do that, and a lot of smaller bushes do that. So like this is all honeysuckle right here. Honeysuckle does that, but it will never grow into a tree. Whereas if you look at any of these other trees, like some of these ones, these are mostly cherries and a couple of oaks, and those will never have opposite branching. They might have one or two branches that look opposite, but if you look at the overall structure of the tree, they'll never have opposite branching. Whereas this, like I said, I don't know if the camera's catching it right now, but if you look up at them, they're all opposite branching right at the top. They're not alternate. So Shakoi just pointed out these tops that we cut off of the tree, they have opposite branching. So here's a great example. This node right here, a branch comes out right here and a branch comes out right here. And it's like that all the way down the tree. So this is the top, these tops of the ash that we cut off. And another thing is, if you cut it down, you can already see, but the wood is almost yellow. It's not quite as yellow as, say, mulberry, but it's got a pretty distinct color to it.
It's like white yellow.
Yeah, it's a whitish yellow, but that's another way you can tell.
But it's super light compared to like if we were to cut down a fresh maple right now. You can like, if you really wanted to, you could throw that up in the air and catch it, opposed to like a cut of maple. So it's easy to haul up. It's still heavy, but
Because the moisture content in it is naturally really low, so it's really light. Okay, so here's another great example. This small little tree right here, that's a sapling. That's an ash sapling. So if you can tell, there's opposite branches. The node right here is opposite. The node right there, and so on. So all those branches, even all the way up to the tippity top, all those branches are opposite branching. So that's going to be an ash tree.
one thing we wanted to mention is that these aren't our woods. I mean, it's where we're staying, but they're not our woods.
This isn't the land that we own.
Yeah. So the woods aren't managed. Not that they have to be managed. You know, if you're gonna harvest firewood, there's great ways to do it. Selectively cutting and allowing other saplings to come up. People here don't do that. They don't get their firewood from the land at all.
So what happened here about 5, 6 years ago, maybe, somewhere between 5 and 10 years ago, there was a lot of white pines. This was a predominantly white pine dominated forest. They cut these trees down to mill lumber for their house.
There's so many invasive species like honeysuckle and
Multiflora rose.
Multiflora rose.
Right.
And, other species that are going to dominate, more brambles, more blackberries, and you know, obviously those are the first pioneer species to come in once the forest is disturbed, but not handled properly, it's going to spread, and it's not what you want in your woods.
So what we're trying to do is, if we do need to cut down a tree for firewood, we're going to try to make sure that it's in a spot that needs the light, or there's maybe other saplings that can use the light. So we're trying to do it in an ecologically sensitive way, if we can.
Especially at our land, when it comes time, we're gonna, you know, purposely go into the woods and plant trees like mulberry, for instance, or even just any acorns or oaks that we find and harvest. For every one tree we cut down, we'll probably plant 5, probably 10 more, depending on where the location is. But I think a lot of people should do that to secure firewood for not only yourself, but for the future generations, and just species that are in that land, like squirrels and such.
Definitely habitat for wildlife. Another thing we wanted to mention was we're not going around cutting every ash tree that we can find because we need it for firewood. It's going to diminish the chances that the ash has to survive. Right now, I think the emerald ash borer is in every county in Vermont. The emerald ash borer came to the United States, I think, in 2002, and it's been confirmed in something like 38 states so far. So it spreads really, really quickly. So that it's going to be devastating for the ash eventually, especially if we can't find a way to build the natural resistance. So there are some ash trees that have a natural resistance to the ash borer. And if we go, not just us personally, but if
as a species, if we go, I mean, we've seen streets lined with ashes and now it's completely bare. I mean, you know, what are we going to tell our children that, you know, we got afraid of an emerald ash borer and we cut everything down?
Right, foresters are telling people, you know, you need to cut your ash trees, turn them into lumber while you still can, so you can get value out of them.
But it's not about profit at all.
It's not about profit. So there are some ash trees that have natural resistance to the emerald ash borers, and those are they call them lingering ashes. And right now they're a little too far apart usually to breed. So there's a database where people are logging these lingering ashes, and then they're bringing pollen to these ashes so they can further the genetic diversity. So maybe we can build up a natural resistance to these ash borers, so the ash can survive. A similar circumstance happened with the American chestnut when the American chestnut blight came over. It's a fungus that kills the chestnut tree from the root stock up. It doesn't kill the root stock, but you know, back in the early 1900s, 1920s, 1930s, when it first came here, foresters told people that you need to cut down your chestnut trees, or just because, you know, chestnut was an amazing wood, it was an amazing tree, but people cut them down for fear of every chestnut being affected. And
just fear in general. I mean, that's, when fear takes over people, it turns into, you know, devastating situations, which I think that we're not acting properly or coherently.
And in doing that, we don't have any naturally resistant chestnuts now. So we'll never know how many resistant chestnuts we cut down, and we really hope that doesn't happen with the ash trees. So if you have ash trees on your property, don't cut them down until they're absolutely dead. You know,
Give
when
'em
they're
a chance.
give them a chance, give them a chance, and then they can, you know, and if they're dead, you can still use them for firewood. You might not be able to use them for lumber, but you can use them for firewood. Standing dead wood burns perfectly fine. So just give them a chance and see if they survive. Another cool thing about ash is it splits wicked easy. It's usually got really straight grain, and it splits really easy. So really, it's a remarkably strong wood for how easy it splits. It's used a lot for lightweight handles like rake handles because it's usually pretty springy and it's lightweight wood, but it's also pretty strong. Look how straight that grain is. Just all the way down.
Beautiful.